talked about words. I'm going to sit down a little bit for this. Same thing happens with the thoughts in your head. You know those thoughts that come? I'm sure you all have them, right? Sometimes they're in somebody else's voice. Sometimes they're in your own voice. Very often what you don't know is what's underneath those. Actually let me go back a bit. I had a mind that had a million voices in it. If you had asked me what was the sound of my own voice, I could not have told you. I had no idea of what I was thinking. I was like I had a nightclub in there. How I discovered how noisy it was is because I could go to the noisiest places and it never bothered me because it was quieter than what was going on in here. I could have, rock with, I'm a rocker anyway, but the rock blaring in the house, the kids doing whatever. It never, ever bothered me because in here was so noisy. So when I began to recognize that tape pulls were so important, like getting these things out of my head, whether they were mine or not, it was like they were just miscellaneous junk that I had picked up. So we can talk about miscellaneous thoughts, and we're going to do a little more on that about energies later on, but it's like all that. So what I would do is I would sit down with a piece of paper, and I'd call them tape pulls because of that. In those days we had tapes. Today we have CDs and other things. The latest thing is the little plug-in things. And so I'm going to call them tape pulls because that's how I still work in my mind, but you can use what you want. So what I used to do is take a piece of paper and I would pick one, just one, and I would write down what it was, and I would think of myself pulling that tape out and putting it down, and I would listen to what was being said next. Okay? So I would write that one down, and I'd pull that out. And then I would keep on doing that. I think the longest one I ever did was 28. Because you have no idea what is in the subliminal or the lower reaches of what's happening under that top part. When I talked about the word stupid, right? When I started pulling that word, what was underneath it was amazing. And actually, in one respect, I think it's a miracle that I achieved anything. Because that was always there. And yet, I went out and I did achieve, and I did achieve well in relation to a lot of things. But if I hadn't had that, it might have been interesting. What I could have done. But it's like to find what is happening underneath there. What's going on deep down? What's happening? What's firing that? And you see, because we want to be quote-unquote positive, today I talk very little about positive, negative, because we're making judgments then as to what is positive and what is negative. What I say, it just is, and do you want it or not? Because what might look positive in the sense of, oh, this sounds good, if you took it out, if it's in your head, filling up space, so in other words, you're not quiet in there, if it's filling up space and you're hearing it often, you want to pull it out and find out what's underneath it. Does anyone understand that? Because it's not something I can really, I practice it, but to make you aware of it. And it's just a matter of pulling it out, listening, pulling it out, listening. Same thing as the word chain, but you're actually activating sort of in a physical way, on an etheric level, out. You're getting it out of your brain. And all I ever do when I've got to the bottom of that, and over the years, and I did a lot of them, I spent 6 months doing this, 6 solid months, consistently, to get my head clear so I could hear me. And there were some times when I would do that, I would come to this blacky, gray, yucky stuff. That's the only way I could explain it. And when I I just used to be so happy because I know I had the real deep level of it, right? It would be like getting the yuck, that real yuck down there. Must have had a lot in my head. So, pulling that out. Did I get that every time? No, I didn't. Some of them are just, this is like the word chain, you run into nothing, Okay, good, that's done. But always. This is what I first began to learn, is that if you take something out, you must replace it. And if you're taking energy out, which we're doing with the tapes, we replace it. So what we replace it with is energy. Now I work with golden light mostly, but you can use any color you want. What you want is to replace it in there, and you want things like self-acceptance, self-love, general love, unconditional love. You want to fill up a space. So if you're going to take something out, always replace it. And that's the golden rule number 1 from Norma Cowie. If you're pulling something out, if you're transferring something, if you're doing anything, you must replace it with something else. And so that's when you will look at, you wanted something there that is not judgmental. So that's why we work with love, right? And light itself. And very often, like when I'm working with clients, as well as students, but mostly with clients, I find when we're doing certain exercises, I'll say, you know, you can think of a color or look around in your mind for a light or a color, and I'll ask them, how does it feel? Because what you want primarily is that you want it to be comfortable, you want it to be accepting of you, and you want it to be loving. Now, even with a little thing like a tape pull, you want to be filling up that space with that. Because the basic idea is to have you come into completeness where you are going to have that feeling running inside you. So when you get criticism from the outside, or when you're running into, well, I'm not really sure, that energy is increasing more and more internally so that you actually are strong enough to be able to move ahead because you know that. And so you're building up that central core of comfortable, accepting, and loving. You might find something else you want to add into that, but I found that was the basic. And you'll notice I work in 3 a lot, because 3 is the creative energy. 2 is you're always having to balance things out, but 3 is the creative. And I always fall back, and again, is that I often talk about this, is that we would not be here without 3 energies. We had our egg, we had the sperm, and we had our soul. And without those 3 things coming together, we would not exist. So 3 is often when I was working with concepts, pulling concepts together to have them work, I'd often come up with 2, and I know there's a 3rd. Where's the 3rd? To make it work. Give it the drive, because you must have expression. You must be able to get out there and do something with that. So any questions or comments about tape pills? Do you think you know how to do those?
So literally, we write down each thought.
Yeah, well I do, because it just keeps a little bit of focus.
So then what do we do with the paper?
Throw it away. If you really wanted to clear it, you would burn it and flush it down the toilet.
So for the first little while, it might be a good idea.
I never worried about that, to be honest, at that point in time, but if you really want to do things, there's 2 things. If you want to clear something and you burn it, to me, I would flush it in the toilet. If I want it to grow, and I write it down and I burn it, I would put it on the ground, outside of the soil. I flashes in my mind when I had my house in White Rock, right on the ocean there. We used to go outside and I have cookie trays, and we'd have them write down what they wanted, and we'd burn them on the cookie trays, and then they would throw them to the 4 winds out there to flourish. But at the same point, if we were clearing something, then we would wash them away by usually flushing it down the toilet.
And
all toilets are good.
And then when you're replacing that, you just do it at the end of after.
You would do as soon as you've got the last tape out. And we're going to find more what to do when you've got the energy, because we're going to go into energy releasing. When that dark energy comes up, if you found that dark energy as well, you'll know more what to do with that as well. But it's like then that's when you refill the space. It's like, and for me, eventually after 6 months, I was able to hear myself, and since then I usually know if it's my thought or collective consciousness thought or somebody else's, because I can pick. Some of you else might be like that. Any of you walk into a store and you know there's somebody being shoplifting or thinking about it? I do. I go, So I break down the thought form, because I had a gal I know who used to come to my meditation circle regularly. One day phoned me up in a panic, and because she said, I keep coming to these stores and feel like I need to shoplift something, and I've never shoplifted in my life. I have no idea what's going on. And I said, well, you're picking up a thought form that's been left there. So just be aware of it, and just, you can pull it, because I knew about pulling thoughts, but just dissolve the thought form. Same thing when I go on an airplane. And you know, sometimes a lot of people are very frightened about flying. And they're sitting there, and if I sit down and I pick it up, I go, okay, who is it? And I'll isolate where the thought's coming from, and then I just sort of send them peace, I would say peace bombs, that's not a very nice word. Peace thoughts, what's another word like a bomb? You know,
Blessing.
Yeah, peace blessing, yeah, that would do. But I kind of, you know, it's like, anyway, I send it with a little bit of force. And get it to settle down. You know, I was like, I've got to watch that word. A lot of people have a lot of connotations about that word. So, but so I fill the plane full of just peaceful, quiet thoughts, and they settle down. And then you can get back to reading your book or doing one time we could knit. We can't do that anymore. So no more knitting needles on planes, you know. Although I saw an older lady with
You can
one.
still crochet.
Yeah.
They let me take my crochet hook.
Isn't it amazing? I saw that an older lady on there, older than me, and I'm, you know, so, but anyway, mostly I just leave all that stuff packed away in my suitcase and just take my books and read. So any other questions about anything I've said so far? Anything? We're good? Okay, let's just